Thank you, everybody, for coming. Tonight's guest presenter, Oliver Klink, and he's going to be presenting tonight on Through the Lens of Humanity, Blending Artistry, Technology, and Global Stories. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and go through, again, I've got some of the bio here on tonight's presenter, Oliver Klink. He's a fine art photographer, originally from Switzerland, now based in San Francisco Bay Area. His last two projects, Cultures in Transition, published in 2019, Poetry in Motion, published in 2025, won 12 awards for best photography books. For those that are here in person, be sure and at the end of the presentation, go back and take a look at some of the books. Very impressive, some of the work that he's done. He'll describe, I'm sure, in his presentation, he put a lot of work into those. Also, as a master pitsography printmaker, I'm sure I mispronounced that, but not even sure exactly what that is, but we'll explain that here in a few minutes. He turned full-time photographer 20 years ago, partnered with Hasselblad to teach workshops for them. The aim was to educate photographers to make authentic images using the best tools, including camera, printers, etc. His biggest influence is Gregory Colbert, a Canadian artist who produced the project Ashes and Snow. We'll go ahead and turn it over to Oliver and look forward to tonight's presentation.
All right. Thank you for making Friday night. It's exciting not to be driving on a Friday night, I can tell you that. I just drove about 12 hours to get here. So why do I say through the lens of humanity? And then I think that's going to give you an idea on the first slide. Jane Goodall, what you do makes a difference, and you have to decide what kind of difference you want to make. And I think try to keep that in mind for when you do photography, right? Because we can all decide with photography, we can have a major influence or we can be whoever, basically. But the big thing that I do myself, everything that I do, books, prints, I do it for myself, right? If I feel that I'm proud of what I've done and I can put it on my coffee table, I have succeeded, right? So that's the first thing that I do. So how did I start? So this was an image that I took in Africa in probably about 2002. I'm very good at logistics. So that's my forte because I can find places around the world, how to photograph it, very, very unique. And then in 2002, I had the lousy planning. It's basically, I was in Africa, I wanted to photograph the Great Migration. And you know, the Great Migration, what it does, it moves all year. And it moves with the water, with the rain. So I got to the northern part of the Serengeti and all the animals had already passed. So the only thing that was left is basically the local animal. And then with the local animal is I could see some vultures just basically circling at one place there. And the only animal that I saw in photograph were those lions. So that was kind of a pretty unique because I was really close. There were no rangers around me and then all those different things. But when I photographed wildlife, then after I went and photographed wildlife in Alaska, and then you look at that image there, right? And it says, that's probably photographed in 2004. Is that an easy image to capture? So any idea, right? You birds photographer. Is that an easy image to capture? No, why not? Right. First, it's coming straight at me, right? And it's black. So how do I expose for that picture when it comes there straight at me and it's black? What do you expose for? Do you expose for the white or do you expose for the black?
The white. The lights, the highlight.
The white.
So what is 80% of your subject? The black.
Black.
Right? You expose for the black. Right? If I expose for the black and I get the perfect black, everything is going to come in place. If I start to expose for anything else, the blacks come pitch dark and then your image doesn't work. So you see there. But this is probably a little easier image to get now because of the cameras. Now this one is probably one of the most challenging images of a wildlife that I've taken. It's a northern hawk owl. That guy is about that tall there, right? It's about that tall. he basically that was photographed in Canada or north of Montreal. And then those guys, what they do, they feed on mice. So the idea here, what lens do you think I used to photograph that northern hawk owl? Just get a sense. 800 millimeter. I could not afford it. I could not afford it.
200.
I could not afford it.
Ooh.
Keep going.
50.
Keep going.
35.
Keep going.
24.
24.
Wow.
24 millimeter lens. Yeah, he's about right here. That guy is about right here.
I'm gonna have to you.
So how?
Mouse on your head?
Yes. No, I didn't have on it on my head. But here, talking about planning there, right? So I had a fixer in Montreal, and then basically she was basically feeding the owl responsibly, so that when I would get there with my group, we could actually photograph the owls. And then our goal was to photograph these snowy owls. And then the thing is, when you photograph this there, right, is you want to have pretty unique images, right? So the background becomes important. And then what is the best lens to have the full animal in focus? It's the wide angle, right? If I photograph with an 800 millimeter lens, I get very shallow depths of field there, right? So that became a really kind of a classic image that I was teaching my student, is you have to plan for it and you have to put yourself in a situation where you're not with everybody else. So we were photographing the snowy owls, and eventually I was mentioning to one person, as soon as a subject becomes popular, I move on and I photograph something else there, right? So the snowy owl, I was there and we were doing the same thing. The challenge with the snowy owl, they eat only 5 mice a day. This guy here is much smaller than a snowy owl, but you know what he does? He grabs a mice, he goes hide it in the trees, and he has a cache system. So that basically during the winter, he knows exactly where he basically caches all these mice. And then you know what he does when he grabs a mice that has been frozen, he puts it in the microwave, right, under his leg, and then that's it there, right? Now, the reason I totally stopped and then by the way, I had about 200 mice in my hotel room because I use only live mice for those guys there. So the snowy owl, what became really mean, it costs a lot of money when you have 200 mice, and then, so some photographer came and they decided that they wanted to use the mice more than one time. And you know what you do? You just tie it to a string, and as soon as the snowy comes, you just yank the other string. And I think at that point I said, that's it, I'm done. I'm never don't want to be part of it. So that's be responsible when you photograph wildlife. So then I have this image, and that's the image that put me on the map. 2 little bear holding hands, got published by National Geographic. That image, basically what was unique about it is I had a group again, and then at that point, I always talked about buffer. You know the buffer. It's not as big of an issue these days with cameras, but you have a buffer and it says, monitor your buffer, right? So there's little bears. You know what basically little bears are scared of, right? Is a big male bear. Because what does the male bear want to do? Kill them so that the sow gets in heat, right? We know that stuff there, right? So the sow was basically catching fish. Those 2 little guys were on the beach, and suddenly they see that big black bear coming, the big grizzly bear, and they run towards us. So I hear all the participants go like this there, right? Because it was amazing to see those bears coming. They passed us there, and then suddenly they stood up, and then I went click, 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 click. I never saw that they touched pause, but that's basically the image I got. So it got published in National Geographic. Unfortunately, it got stolen about 1,500 times, right? And then National Geographic is basically, I'll tell you a kind of a good story to give you an idea. So I was selling my images at the street fair, you know, like what you have around here, right? The street fair. And I had that image hanging there, right? A woman comes to the booth and he said, my God, you have the audacity of stealing an image from National Geographic and then print it. And I said, did he ever down on you that could be my image there, right? And after a little bit of a discussion, she said, okay, I'm going to buy, that's your image there, right? Which was great. But talking about who stole my images there, right? So on TV, there's a show called Dateline. You know, that's those crime show and all that stuff there, right? Usually when they come back from commercial, they usually have the courtroom, the grand view of the courtroom there. Guess what was on the screensaver of one of the computer in that courtroom? That little bear's there. So the thing is, as famous as that little bear is, nobody knows who is associated with it, the name. And that's most common with all the images there, right? Unless you have Steve McCurry with the Afghan girl. Remember like that blue-eyed girl, Steve McCurry? Nobody remembers anything, right, about the images. So now I have that little bear. And I said, what am I going to do with that little bear there, right? So what about if I make a story, right? So that was called Artistry, and that was my first book. So you see that's a snippet of the book. You have that little girl basically hanging out on the beach there. She starts a fight with her brother, right? And then guess who gets into trouble? The little guy gets into trouble there, right? And then basically you see now your images becomes a little more powerful, that you have something to say instead of having all those images. And basically the idea of that story was that little bear wanted to grow really, really fast and be the big bear, the best bear. And you realize at the end of the day that he'd rather be with his sister and his mom. And that was the last image of the book. So all those images, when I did take them, right, it was because I was there and I said, oh, this is an amazing image. But I felt that at one point when I compiled that story, that became a lot more powerful. My images became a lot more powerful. So some people that influenced me or that I really like, Mary Ellen Mark, she is from New York, I believe. To me, photography is about sharing life, to make the viewer feel something about another person's existence, right? So some people have looked at my book there, right, that I published, Culture in Transition, and I think that's what you feel there, right? There's an existence, there's something a little bit different. So what Mary Ellen Marks was really known for is circus. She photographed the circus in the 60s. And then the thing is, I've been dying to photograph circus, but the circus doesn't exist anymore. So I went to India and then saw the Kushti wrestler. So the Kushti wrestler, I have a really good customer in Bangalore. I mean, the husband is a billionaire, right? So I arrive in Bangalore, and then his wife said, I'm going to have a limo that pick you up at the airport. You can stay at our palace's home, and then you'll have servant and whatever. And I knew that something was not right. It was not really me. So I told her, I said, do you know what? Plans have changed and all that stuff. I'm not really going to Bangalore, even if I was in Bangalore. I arrived at the airport. I took a tuk-tuk downtown, basically Bangalore, and I stayed at the $1 hotel. And then because I wanted to meet those guys, right, the Kushti wrestler. And then Kushti is a spiritual, basically, wrestling that you do in India. You know, they wear those little G-strings, and this is really kind of the low level of the society. It was an incredible experience, but they allow me to photograph them under one condition. What do you think that condition was?
That you give them a copy.
No. That I would fight with them. Which made sense there. I said, do you know what? Why don't you fight with us? And then after you're going to know what it feels like it. So there was that guy. And then I agreed to fight. So they had to put that little G-string, you know, I'm butt naked and then all that stuff. So there's all those guys there, right? And there's one guy, he's 18 years old, and he's about 300 pounds. And he's called the elephant, right? And then when it came to him, I said, unfortunately, I cannot fight that guy because this guy is going to destroy me, right? At 18, he has no control of what happened. And that they did agree. But eventually, I went and swam in the Ganges River. That was another place, and then all that stuff. It was really an amazing experience. And then I do things there, right? I have not published anything about the Kushti wrestler. When you have that experience there, right, where you feel really who they are, then you take much, much better images. They're willing to work with you, and that's kind of what Mary Ellen Marks did with her project. So Gregory Colbert is a Canadian photographer, did Ashes and Snow. I tried to make images that allow people to see the world as it for the first time, to feel Eve again. So Gregory Colbert photographed elephants and human. So he had these beautiful images of basically women interacting with elephant. He did whales and so on. And in 2001, I believe it was 2001, he was invited to exhibit at the Biennale in Venice, which is very prestigious there, right? If you have a chance, it's really a great place to go see photography or art in general. And after the exhibit, his galleries were after him like a bad rush there, right? And then he said, well, can you exhibit really, really large images? And he said, well, a gallery about that small, so nobody could exhibit his images. So he decided to build his own gallery. And you know how he built his own gallery? He had shipping container. So maybe that might ring a bell now for some people that read a little bit about photography. So he stacked shipping container and then toured that around at 4 different locations. So he was in New York on a pier, Santa Monica, the pier, and he went to Mexico City. And then to this day, he is, out of a living photographer, he has the most viewed exhibit. 10 million people saw his exhibit in basically Mexico City. So that had a really huge influence. And he was doing a printing that was incredible. And then I couldn't figure out how you could do this print, AKA the idea that I'm doing my own inking and all that stuff that came from Gregory Colbert. So when you look at it there, right, is I started to feel that I wanted to photograph again that interaction between elephant and human in a different ways than Colbert did. This is photographed in Thailand. That's why I'm going back and then basically teaching my student how to basically take images like this. What was amazing in that image, by the way, the little structure that you see on the left and on the right there of the image, those are elephant tombs. That's elephant tombs. That's where they bury the elephant, the bones of the elephant. So it's a very, very spiritual place. So I photographed this, and it takes about a half an hour plus minus, right, to take an image like this. So I was looking at all my images, right, over a half an hour time frame. The monk did not move an inch. He was there for about a half an hour. The elephant was all over the place, but the monk. So it was a little easier to pick the image. But you have, for example, images like this too, right? So when you photograph basically those people with elephant, you feel I said, oh, I can pick anybody. I can put them next to the elephant. Try to be next to an elephant. When the elephant starts to move his ears, this is scary, right? And there, the elephant is basically kneeling in the water. If the elephant starts to stand up there is massive chaos. So her name is Lil B. I've photographed her for about 5 years. And then I said, how come you're so comfortable around elephants there, right? I said, well, I ride an elephant to school. So you see that's kind of the people you want to find to photograph. And that's a village that nobody goes to in Thailand. So she's a teacher too. And then the first time I went, that's in Sri Lanka. I got there and then I'd asked my fixer, I said, oh, can you get a few people that I could photograph with and he brought me about 30 kids and she was part of it and all that stuff. And I picked her, she's a delightful lady. At the end, I usually pay those people really, really well there, right? Because I think they deserve it. She came to me and said, do you know what it is? There's all those kids that you couldn't pick. Why don't you give them money instead of me? So that's how great they are in Sri Lanka there. That's the, but is that a pretty good image? Yeah. Do you think that could make it to your contest there? Should I join your club? Yeah, that's the, I'll talk a little bit more about silhouette there, right? So this is a Lantern Festival there, right? So now you move into conceptual photography, right? What is the concept that you have? And then so when you are there, you're kind of a director of photography. And then that's what I do. I'm very creative when I photograph there, right? Some other ideas. This is photographed with an infrared camera. As you can see the foliage on the back there, I've converted one of my camera to infrared. This is also a very, very difficult image there. That was really inspired by Ashes and Snow, Gregory Colbert. I'm on the top of the bridge. And I have basically Dulika, that's her name, and one of her students. I said, just be really peaceful on that elephant. And then that elephant is fidgeting in the water. It took us only 2 years to get that image there. And that's here. Oh, this is a good image with a tattooed guy. So yeah, I don't have tattoos there, right? So I'm not kind of a fan of tattoos, but my friend told me, he said, there's that tattooed guy that you might want to photograph in Thailand. I said, tattooed? I'm not really into it. When I got there, the relationship that he had with elephant was incredible. And then, so you see there, right, with the texture of the elephant, with that guy with the tattooed. And at one point, I asked the guy, I said, where do you do your next tattoo, right? Because he's full of tattoo everywhere. He said, I'm going in my inside lip now to tattoo. He said, what about down there? I said, you can imagine. That's, yeah. But he became an incredible friend that, yeah.
Are you doing off-camera?
Yeah, it's 2 flashes. Yeah, I carry flashes with me when I do. Yeah, 2 flashes.
Some of the lights.
So
Okay.
So now this is a really interesting. So that going back to that circus story, right? Wedding story in India. So I had the idea, I said, what about if I get a white screen and then I get an elephant, full cruise, costume, and then all that stuff there, right? So I set up all that stuff. I wish I always had the budget of Annie Leibovitz, but I have about 1,000 of her budget there, right? So this is a white screen behind the elephant. So for the background, what I did, I went to a museum and photographed the paintings, old paintings, and then I superposed the elephant on the top of it. So imagine there is at the backyard, there's a little gate, you know, kind of that wedding gate there that goes into the backyard. And I said, holy shit, how is the elephant going to come there? The elephant went, crawled on his knees and went underneath. And then in the backyard, there was a rabbit. I said, I want to photograph an elephant with a rabbit. And then the mahout there told me, said, impossible. The elephant is scared of the rabbit. Yeah, and then I could see the elephant. When he was walking in the backyard, he just got like this and tried to avoid the rabbit. And you know the story we know about the mice and the elephant? That's true. That's not a myth. Yeah. So those are images that I photographed that were basically influenced. So you see how creative you could become there, right? With photography. So Nick Brandt. So Nick Brandt is a fellow. Studied to photography in Africa about 30 years ago. Anybody knows about Nick Brandt? A very famous guy, famous photographer, did amazing thing about the money that he raised for Africa. He created an association called Big Life. And then Big Life support 250 rangers to basically prevent poaching. So that's basically what he has done. I don't want to simply document, I want to evoke, to create an emotional connection that inspires action. So what Nick Brandt is very, very good at, and then I suggest that you guys go and then basically look at the those names, because I think as photographer, you want to be a sponge there, right? Like for example, at home, I own over 2,000 books, right? And I'm a sponge there. The images that are hanging at my house are all friends. There's none of my images hanging at my house there, right? And I trade a lot of images and all that stuff there. So what I did that is a little different than Nick Brandt, I'm really about the environment myself, right? And I was talking to Bruce and the people that invited me for dinner, is to me, Africa is so rich. The environment is so rich, the number of species of animal that you have. And then when I lead the workshop there, on the first day, I ask everybody after looking at their images, can that image be taken in a zoo? And if the answer is yes, then you're spending a shitload of money to be in Africa there, right? And then I think you should ask your question every places you go when you travel there, right? Can this be taken at home, or can this, or what is so unique about it? So you notice there, right? There is life in Africa. There is life and there is depth, death, and then all that stuff. So that's what I've not seen many. Typically, the images that I take, I Google a lot about images and all that stuff, and I try to take images that are not on Google. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do. So like this, right? How do I get that image there, right? Jane was asking me. I never saw that when I went to Africa. Why? I mean, this is one image a day. I positioned myself early in the morning. I knew kind of that the elephant would basically cross the river. Did I know that that little guy would be climbing the hill? No, I didn't. But the thing is, when you have positive thinking, when you photograph, things happen. And then I saw the little guy crossing the river. He couldn't really swim, so the mom is basically carrying with his trunk. And this hill was pretty steep there, right? And obviously, I photographed the elephant when they were down the river. And I said, if this elephant come up there, that's basically the image, right? And it did happen there, right? So that's kind of, this guy was probably about less than a month old. So then after you have the typical elephant that are dusting there, right? Now, again, elephant or herd animal, right? You're going to see, I photograph a lot of, show who they are. This is to me an amazing image there. So the way I usually gauge a good image, I typically see in my images that is a primary, secondary, tertiary, and tertiary subject, right? So what does that mean? What is a primary subject here? Elephant, right? So I have the elephant there, right? And then what about if I remove the elephant? What is the secondary subject? The trees there, right? What about if I remove the trees? What is left in the image? Yeah. So you see, you have birds, you have reflection, you have all those things. So even if I remove the primary subject, even if I remove the secondary subject, this is still a good image. So typically when I look at the images that win this photo contest, obviously they're all way worse than my images there, right? And then I look at it and say, why the heck did that image win? And that's the principle that I use. What is a primary, secondary, tertiary subject? And if you remove, like for example, we talked a little bit about bird in flight, right? You have a bird in flight in front of a blue sky. What is your primary subject? Bird, right? You remove the bird, what's left? Nothing, right? So if you want a primary and a secondary subject with a bird in flight, what do you need?
Something of interest, another bird.
What you need a behavior, right? So if you have a bird that carries a crab or whatever, right? So the primary subject is a behavior. Secondary is going to be the bird. And then after you don't have the tertiary subject there, right? So some of the idea. So typically with wildlife is challenging to do primary, secondary, tertiary, because the idea is to document. You want to document, say, oh, I saw that basically guy that is out there, right? That's So here's another image that I took, and then people are asking me, why did you cut the ear? Do you know why?
Because you're running for your life.
That's it. I got only one image of that guy. That guy was peacefully there, and then obviously I was at the right place, backlit, and suddenly he started to charge a Jeep. And I was there I typically don't photograph with a long lens there, right? I was there with my 400 millimeter lens, and I just click one, and boom, that's the only thing I got. So that's, yeah. So, but it still works, I think, right? Does that still work? Yeah, I think it's, okay, Sebastião Salgado. I'm sure you kind of know this guy, right? Please tell me that you know this guy. He's a Brazilian guy, right? He recently died. The photographer is a witness of what passes through his time. So what Salgado became really famous for is basically Genesis. He photographed a lot of the people around the world and the condition of the people. And I highly recommend that you go on TEDx and listen to what that guy said. He was in Congo or Rwanda, might be in Rwanda, where they had the genocide. And he was there, and then he was really sick, where he was bleeding from everywhere, right? And then he went to a doctor and they couldn't find anything wrong with him. He goes to a friend doctor in Paris. And the guy tells him, he said, look, you're surrounded by death. And that's basically what's happening psychologically to you. So the guy decided, said, you know what, I need to go back home to Brazil. And you know what Brazil is doing with the Amazon forest, right? And then his parents have a farm on the Amazon, close to the Amazon. So he planted 1 million trees. A single guy could plant 1 million trees. And that's what he became really famous for. But I highly recommend TEDx and then listen to what he had to say. So how did he influence me? So these were the images that I took on a book that is Cultures in Transition. And then there's many, many stories, and I'm not going to tell you all the stories because they're all in the book and they are kind of well written. But this one here, it's kind of interesting. That was my first trip to Bhutan. Typically, I never get an image on my first trip. I was there with 2 friends. I had not planned the trip. And then I saw that facade and I said, this is going to make an amazing image. And my friend, the only thing they wanted to do is to go on the tour of basically that day. I said, you know what? No problem. Why don't you pick me up tonight? I'm going to stay here the entire day. And I started to see that facade was a bus stop. That store there is a bus stop. So there were all the people that came in and out and then all that stuff there, right? And then I was there with my guide and then I said, do you know what it is? There's something that is a little bit missing. I just feel this is kind of a theater. You know, like where you're in those luxury boxes there, right? The people at the top. But you need a subject, right? You need a subject at the bottom. And there were no real subject. So there were 2 goats that were behind us in the field. So we went and grabbed these 2 goats, just grabbed them to put them right there in the front. I didn't know that they would be butting head like this. But you know, that's what made that image there, right? I think. And that was kind of the catalyst that I see what I could do basically with those images.
Did you stage all of those people?
No, those people were right there. Yeah, those people were right there. That's the, yeah, because there was a bus stop. There was plenty of the goat had to basically bring them. So this is, again, I think, look at it in the book. It's actually much better than on the screen there. Is if you know a little bit about the Asian culture there, Asian typically don't show PDA, public display of affection there. When I saw this elderly couple touching hands, I said, wow, that was amazing. But what I really learned from my in-law in 2001, they are from mainland China, and they immigrated to the US in the 60s during the Cultural Revolution. So I took them there in 2001, and that was the first time they went back to China in 2001. And then when we were there, he told me about a very, very good Chinese proverb. It says, when you cross the river, you need to feel the pebble under your feet. So what does it mean? He felt that in 2001, China was already growing too fast. And then I'm from Switzerland there, right? So why would I go to China to photograph all the different places? And that's that 40 trips, 800,000 images there, right? So I went deeper and deeper into China. And every time I was coming back, I was showing my father-in-law the images. I said, my God, this is amazing. This is exactly the China that I felt. And I could feel that as a Swiss boy that grew up in the mountain in Switzerland, I could relate to those farmers and the people that I basically had photographed. And like, for example, this image, this is a pretty good image too, right? As you see the separation behind. And then I go back to the village there, and I give them an image there, right? Give them an image to the family, and they start to cry. I said, Jesus, my images are that bad that I made people cry. Guess what happened? She had passed away.
Oh.
And that's the only image that they had of their daughter. Because, you know, they don't have phone, they have nothing there, right? That's the, so sometimes photography can be very powerful. So a few monks there that, she became my guide in China. This is also in Bhutan, place that I love to photograph. Typically, it's on my, at the end of the first trip, I flew back to Bangkok, And next to me, there was a Bhutanese that was sitting, and I started to strike a conversation. And he tells me, I'm a painter. I said, you're a painter? Yeah, I say I paint all those monasteries. I said, oh, that would be fantastic if I could photograph with you. Do you want to become my guide? And you know, if you have been to Bhutan or those places, they never let you in the monastery at 4 o'clock in the morning there, right? So this is a private monastery that he painted, and suddenly I had the access that I wanted. So that's kind of the trick that I use. Eagle hunters. Anybody knows about the eagle hunters? So yeah, Mongolia tradition is they hunt with eagle, they capture the eagle at birth. Halfway, great culture, halfway through the life of the eagle, they release the eagle in the wild so they can procreate and the culture can continue. I did a documentary about that little girl, one of the eagle huntress there, that got features premiere at the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco. And then again there, right, I always ask myself, and I mentioned that during dinner time, is if I would be there 360 days out of the year, would this make a good images? Right? And then if you're a photographer, guess what? Don't you see an S curve here, right? That everybody wants in the image there, right? Don't you see 3 little rider, 3 instead of 2, right? And you see the home, you see those guys are going there, and there's a full story there, right? So the thing is, even if I would leave 360 days out of the year, I think this is a darn good image, right? So, but that's how I gauge my images there, right? Are they good enough for a local person? Not for the people that I show that say, wow, I've never been there before, right? That's, and I can tell stories. So here, another one. So this was a 40 trip that I did in China. And you can see for people that know a little bit about China, this is Beijing, basically. Right? You have Beijing here, so I'm really west of China there. And then typically the people west of China they don't like to be photographed for a specific reason. They were worried that those images would go back to Beijing, and Beijing would start to know the living condition there. Now, I photographed a lot of the images in 2016. You go there, this is gone. Yeah, everything has been modernized there. That's here. So this is my in-laws there. So I do a lot of the printing. People ask me what kind of printer I use. This is one of the printers. I have 3 printers at home, that size. And then, so typically what do I do then after, as a visual artist, it's very, very difficult to write. And then I do take a lot of notes when I'm on trip there because I can tell you it's very painful. When you start to make a artist statement or stuff like that, and you open your page and it's blank. I said, what am I going to write? And you know, as good as ChatGPT is and all this shit there, it's never going to be you, right? If you don't have basically what you wrote when you were there. So again, how do I make books? Is with the person I work with, Gia and Kate Yordle, the 2 people I work with, we do everything analog. So with Gia, he asked me there on that project, he said, print me a few images, right? And then I'll go through it and I'll tell you what I like. That few images was 30,000. Wow. So we started to print 30,000 images that I basically will look through it. And he said, I need another 20,000, right? So that basically the way we work. And then when we have kind of a little bit better concept there, I'm going to try to see if it's going to work there, but you're not going to get the sound there. But typically we work still with just spider roll, and then that's what is called sequencing. And that's what is really amazing in the book that you can look at it, right? Is a sequence, how everything really works well together. And then what do we do if we are uncertain about one image or another? Then you basically put 2 images, one like this, and then you remember like some people say, oh, these eyes were wonderful. And that's the image that made the book. So that's typically what we do when we make the book. And that book, it took us about 2 years to make. So that's the idea. So, and then good reason that book won 9 awards. We wanted to make an award-winning book. We didn't know what the award means. It's like, and as soon as we started to apply it, then all this award came. Yeah, highly recommend it. If you want to own only one book in your life, I think that's the book that I would recommend to them. That's yeah. So the way we designed the book, then I basically pay for all my books, and then I distribute everything, distribute store, and I do everything myself from that point. So I had to build an extra studio at my house because there were 12 of those pallets that arrive of those books. I'm crazy to make big books too, and I didn't even learn on the second book that is even larger. But I can tell you when you make a book there, what I've learned, especially on that first book, is the lifespan of a book is about 1 year, right? If you look at it, there you have 1 year to basically sell your book, 6 months usually, but 6 to 1 year. After 1 year, if you have leftover book, it goes into remainder in your whatever, is usually the publisher basically torch it, right? This book is, after it was published in 2019, is I have 20 books left. And then to these days, you cannot find a book on the used market. That's how good that book is there. That to give you an idea. And then you have basically book signing, you have exhibit that you do on a book. And then I always like to give back to the community, so I do a lot with kids. And then here the game that I had with the kids, they had to mimic what was in the image, and then we would photograph them. And then I used Polaroids there at that point, so they could get their images right away. I exhibited in 4 different continents there, and then in Paris. Do you know the Louvre just had some issue there? Yeah. I exhibited next to the Louvre, Carousel du Louvre. That's the, yes, nobody stole my images, too bad. And then it got published. As I told you, a documentary was made. And eventually, I'm there in France. I'm at the end of the show. Not every image is sold. I had to load the car, drive to Switzerland, and now the exhibit is at my mom's house. That's yeah. So she's telling me, said, how am I going to make money with these images? And Mom, there's one thing you don't want that to happen to me, right? That's yeah. So Robert Frank, Swiss photographer. You know The Americans, very famous book. Like one thing that you want to write down to, The Americans, he went through the US in the 60s. And then went to the prairies and photographed the people in Chicago and all that stuff. But this is kind of a poignant quote. Photography is a way of feeling, of touching, of loving. What you have caught on film is captured forever. It remembers little things long after you have forgotten everything. So again there, right, is when you look at this, the book, the horse book that I made, is when I look at that image, decent image there, right? Pretty well framed, feet off the ground, backlit, is what I did after I photographed her. I interviewed her. It said, so what do you like about horses, right? And she gave me a really, really good thought about it. She said, I don't know any little girls that don't dream of owning a horse. Mm-hmm. Guess what happened? It was the title of my chapter, Dreams. Right? And I interviewed many, many people, and that's how he gave me basically the title of all the different books there. Right? So Jennifer Short. So that's basically the dream that I just told you, right? If I were to say one word about horses, it would be dreams. There's hardly a single little girl out there that doesn't dream of owning a horse. So you notice that on my books called Poetry in Motion, there is no mention of horses on the title there, right? And this is the first image in the book. Why did I put an image of a horse in a cave as a first image? Any reason? Exactly. You know, like the drawing in southern France, there. And then you don't know about this, what a cave is too, but that was one of the reasons. The other reason, these caves were Christianity, the Christians were basically hiding in Turkey. That's in Cappadocia, right? So you have all this basically mystical thing about the horses that is very, very poetic there. So again there, right, there's a lot of thinking when I do make project. So
Should that have a hot air balloon over it in Cappadocia?
they do it, but yeah, outside of the
Yeah, I
game.
know.
They're outside of the game. But they should be actually, you should tell me, shouldn't be the wedding people with the heart right now, right? Which is very famous there. So this is also an interesting image there, right? It is. I took a workshop there, right? Because I wanted to have access to the horses. Not that I don't know how to photograph, but incredible guy. His name is Tony Stromberg. if you want to take any horse photography, I highly recommend Tony Stromberg. He is an amazing guy, but he kind of does. He's very good at horses, but I want better images than basically in that situation. So I was there. And then Tony is great. He put me there, and I see that horse is walking off the beach like this there, right? And I said, doesn't cut it for me, right? It doesn't really cut it. So the guy, so basically the way you do it there, right? You have a diver that goes with the horse in the water, and he releases the horse there, right? He releases the horse. So the guy was speaking French. And I told the guy in French there, I said, can you release the horse when there's a big wave that comes behind him? Guess what the horse did?
Ran.
And that made the image there, right? So if you look at primary, secondary, tertiary image there, right? What is the behavior number one? That's the horse running, right? So if I remove the horse running, I still have the horse, then I still have the wave, then I still have the water behind it there, right? But if I have the horse that is just walking like something, there's nothing. There's no energy in that image there. So that turned out to be a really darn good image. Even Tony told me afterwards, said, how did you do that image? You were right there. So that's one of my quotes. In the eyes of a horse, we see our own emotion reflected back at us, a mirror of the soul. This is another good image of southern Spain. No, what is it? Northern Spain, Galicia region. So they actually round up wild horses once a year. I do not speak the language there in Galicia because they speak their own languages there. And then I was there and I said, oh, they round up all horses, and I'd read it's between 100 and 400 horses. Didn't know exactly where to go. I had one guy that was crypting me a bunch of things there. But I saw that scene there, right? Doesn't that look like a painting?
Yes.
Right. So why does that look like a painting? Because of the dust there, right? You have the dust. So I'm there and I said, if those horses come down here, I get my image. And guess what I did? I just waited. And then, miracle or not miracle, as some people saw my images, oh, that's another miracle. That's a lucky shot. That's another lucky shot. Those horses were coming down at me there, right? What lens do you think I used on that one?
15.
Much shorter than that.
What? Oh, official.
Is I use a 45 millimeter medium format. So I'm photographing this with a medium format camera, which go like this there, right? But this was amazing, like the way the horses were coming. So, and this was also these are dressage horses, kind of one is an Olympic horse, but you see what I'm going after, right? The light. You talk a little bit about silhouette. I think I did put a few silhouette images there, so I can tell you. Supernatural, not the Marvel kind. Christina is a really interesting lady there too. I love working with her. Usually when a horse is at the fork of the meat or the being saved, she is usually the last cog in the wheel there. And then this is a gypsy vanner. And then she's able to basically manage those horses. And I can do amazing things with her there. You should see some of the images in the book that I did with her there too. That's the
Did you use a fog machine for this?
Yep, fog machine, flashes. Yep, fog machine and flashes. That's the and LED lights too. So some of the other images for, oh, this is interesting, right? If you talk a little bit about silhouette there. Right, so I had seen a classical concert with candles. Have you ever guys seen classical concert with candles? This is phenomenal, right? You have this guy playing violin and there's candles. And I said, oh, can I do that with horses? So I have a friend in California, right? He owns a bunch of horses. And he said, well, yeah, just bring 1,000 candles and we'll see what happens, right? So I bought 1,000 candles. And after 1 week, we basically got the image. So, and then again, here I had the fog machine, I had the flashes. So the challenge that we had, the horses had to be used to that. And then usually horses, when they're used to, they just go all over the place and they step on the candle. Oh shit, another 10 that are gone there, right? And then with the fog machine, I don't know if you ever worked with fog machine, they make that little sound. You should see the horses go, and then another one. After 1 week, there were none left, but I got the images there. So how do you photograph basically silhouette backlit there, right? So you have two options there, right? Is you can totally silhouette the basically the your subject, or you can put a little bit of flash in the front or expose a little bit for the front. I prefer to expose a little bit there instead of being totally silhouette there. While in the present, it is the closer we'll ever get to touching the essence of freedom. You want a story on this one? Okay, Navajo Indians. Who has ever photographed Navajo Indians? So, okay, little caveat up front. I'm a white guy from Switzerland. I have no reason to photograph them, right? They have been abused by the white people for so long, right? So I'm at Monument Valley, and for the horse book, I had the idea of getting the John Wayne Point with a guy on the horse on the John Wayne Point. So I found the John Wayne Point there. There was a guy with his horse. I did not photograph him because it was blue sky. He comes back to me and he said, how come you didn't photograph me? I said, I didn't want to tell him that I wasn't too excited. But I said, but if you rear your horse on that point, I'm going to photograph you. And then he said, yeah, I can do it. I can do it. And then do you know what he said next there? It's going to cost you $1,000. So he said, $1,000 for one shot there. I said, that's kind of a little steep for one image there, right? So I go, anybody has been to Monument Valley? You know, you have that little booth where you have to pay there, right? So I stop at the booth, ask a lady, I say, hey, do you know anybody that owns horses? I said, oh, my husband Larry owns 6 horses there, right? So I go to Larry's ranch there, and he's a Navajo guy. So I have a pretty good relationship there, right? And then I take that image when I just get to his ranch. And this is a pretty darn good image there, right? He did not know that I had that image. But you see there's 2 kids. He has 2 kids there. And then the next day I told him, he said, is that possible to go to a parallel of Monument Valley? I said, oh yeah, and all the grandparents own everything there, right? It's always the grandparents own everything. So he said, yes, we shook hands. And I pay him a really good amount of money there, right? And then after he said, the next famous sentence is, under one condition. The condition was, you're going to tip my kids. And I said, you know what, 2 kids, I'll give them really good money. It's pretty fair there, right? So the next morning, number 1, he showed up on time, which was good. Guess how many kids showed up?
10.
A dozen, 20.
13.
Oh.
So that image is a lot more than 1,000. So eventually that horse book was 160,000 images, 12 countries, 30 shooting location. And then that's basically what I got there. So now let me show you a little bit what it takes to actually make a book. Because some people don't have really the concept there, right? So when you are on press here, right? So this is basically what it is on press. So what you have in the background there is, it looks like that pizza oven there. That's a press there, right? That's a Heidelberg press. And this one has basically 7 colors. So that's what I use, 7 colors to print basically the first book. So what you have the fellow that is on the left-hand side. He is basically reviewing, that's a pressman. He's reviewing a scanner that you see the big enlargement there. And then for every images that comes out, or that before we make a recipe, we grab a piece of the print, and then we look at it and say, is that exactly what we want, right? So that's basically the way, as we have 7 colors, or for the host book, I use 5 colors. That's a plate. So what the plate does, and then I'm going to simplify it as a CMYK, right? So C, cyan, yellow, black, and magenta, right? So that plate is only the cyan. The next plate is going to be only the yellow, the next plate only the red, and then all that stuff there, right? So then after that, you put the plates in the machine there, and then basically what you do is, I had done a mock-up of the book myself, which is right there in the front. I have the mock-up. I have my prints that I made. And then this is what comes out of the press. And then we try to triangulate so that everything matches basically the feel that I want in all the images. The advantage of going on press is there you can actually have a say and tell me, said, do you know what it is? I feel that image should have a little bit more black or something like that. Otherwise, what those guys look at, they look at the screen, and then here it tells you, oh, there's too much yellow in the image there, then basically we would decrease the yellow. And the way you decrease the yellow, then after you look at the ink, and then you just remove the roller a little bit further away from the plate. So there is my dad was a printmaker, so I spent a lot of time on press with my dad, and that felt really good to be back on press. So this is a video. I'm not going to play it because you don't get the sound. Maybe I'll play it without the sound because I cannot play both there, right? I think so I'll give you some ideas what it does there. And typically to print a book, that's about 1 week. It takes us about 1 week. If you want to make 750 books like I did, you need to print about 1,300 books because the bindery wants some reject, the press does, things can happen and all that stuff there. So what becomes really expensive is the paper. The paper is very expensive. Is the size of the book that you make. And then in my case, as it's an Italian paper that I cannot find any other places there, is you can see now, right? The press is running. So when you pull out basically an image, you put it right close to that scanner. And then now we look at the images, and you see there on that one, there's 2 images on the page. If your images are much smaller, there's going to be more images on the page there. But this was they're very, very large. And then he has a helper that is on the back of the press. He's asking me, hey, what should I do? I said, hey, no, nothing there, right? So, and then after you keep doing the paper, you load more paper on it. And when that's done, that's a reject. So that's a reject. I can tell you if I would be right there, I would take all that reject and take it home because it's still good print. And that's what is called a signature, right? So you have basically all the signature, and then from when that's done, it goes to the bindery. So is what you have next there. Let me see if it's going to go. So it's kind of, you're right there. And then you have to tell all those professionals that, I think I want a little bit more of this, more of that. And that's what I say there, right? Is you want to have the buy-in from the owner of the company, of the press. Because if you have the buy-in from the owner, he's going to come there, and then all the employees are working really hard for you to make the best book possible. That's the... So this time on press, I signed all the books. So all the books that you have here are already signed. And then after that, we had to print the cover. And the cover is really, really incredible on that book. So I found the material in Japan. And then what I wanted is when people open the book is, you see how it feels there, right? You have a full, and then here's for the people online there, right there. So you see there, right? It's really, really unbelievable. But as the image is also in the book, we wanted to make sure that the image matches. So now what we have here is we have the markup that I made. We have the images that is printed in the book, and then that's basically the sample that came out of the first run on the press. So you keep doing exactly the same until you have the recipe, and then at one point you launch it, and that goes. So then you go to the bindery. And then the bindery is now, that's that signature that I'm talking about. So I'm there in that bindery, and I had a hard time finding the bindery. Those guys are smoking at the chain there. I said, oh, I'm spending so much money on that book. I'm really worried about that bindery. So I asked the bindery on the first book that I was making. I said, have you guys ever bound a really good book or something like that? And he said, yeah. There's one of your president. We bound the book of your president. You know Pete Souza? You know who Pete Souza is? That was the Obama's photographer. And he made 800 copies of his book. Second best-selling book after Joe Satori. Joe Satori is a National Geographic, all the animals there, the endangered animals there. So, but the book, Pete Souza's book is kind of pretty small there, right? I said, oh, that's not what I was looking for, right? They only make big book because this is an oversized. So when it's oversized, a lot of things has to be done manually, right? And then I'll tell you the next company there. There's a company, a very famous publisher in the US called Taschen. And Taschen, they do what's called a sumo book. So the sumo book, they are so big that it comes with a stand, right? So I said, oh, we made sumo book for Taschen. He comes. They said, okay, I'm in good hand. Now, that was on the first book. On the second book, for the people that are engineers or technical here, is you see on what edge the binding is done. The binding is done on the short edge, right? So what you do is if you bind on this side, most of the book that are that large, always this side, because you bind here and it's very easy like this. So how do you do a binding like this here on this side? So I'm going to show you. So that's the next video of this one. And again, I'll tell you because let's see if it's playing. Okay, here it's playing. So everything had to be done manually. So this guy is double gluing basically the hinge of the book, right? So this is that part of the book on the inside. So everything had to be done manually glued. Then after when this is manually glued, then after you put the book block, that was sewn also manually there, right? So that's a book block in the middle there, right? This is a book block there. So you see that he puts a book block there, put the cover around the book block. Then that goes into one machine, and that machine is going to bind the glue. It's going to heat and bind the glue. And then what you have that, because you have to reinforce, make sure that you have that hinging of the book there. There is that hinging that machine doesn't do. Then you have to have the last step. And the guy that is right there doing the last step, that's the owner of the bindery. So because we didn't know until the very last moment if that would actually work. So you see there, he binds like this, and that's basically the end of the book. So the criteria that I had for this book, I wanted to have a lay flat because I have a lot of images that goes across the page there. And then if you hold the book like this, the book would not start to sag. The images would just fall apart. So yeah, until the very last minute, we didn't know if that book would exist or not. So, but it did. So it was very good. So then this is typically what happened there, right? You pallet the book and then you get the delivery of the book. I'll show you maybe that's. So this is at my studio. And then, so you have a big truck that arrives. I think on this one, there was a few less pallets. There was only 10 pallets. This is my classroom. That's why I teach workshop. And then basically we start to load the books. You can see it was a perfect sizing of the pallet that we made. I'm not sure why it did work, but it did. And then eventually after one point, when everything is done there, people ask me, when are you going to teach the next workshop? When I sell all the books. That's it.
You have to buy a book to have a workshop.
Exactly, right? And then the next part is, let's see if it goes. This is really was an interesting design. So, and I'll show you in a book afterwards. It feels that I'm telling stories with my images there, right? It's like a movie. I'm making a movie with my images. And do you know what is at the end of the movie? The credits. These are my tributes to all the people that I photograph. So if you look at it, is all the countries that I photograph, all the people, all the horses. So those are my credits for the books.
Keep notes on all of these?
Oh yeah. I keep notes of everywhere I photograph, all the people and all that stuff. Yep, that's the and I write notes. And then eventually that book got really well received. Already won 3 awards for best book. Actually, these two awards is not just best photography book, it's best book of 2025 for independent publisher. I do print a lot myself there, right? I have a color printer too. And then now I'm on a book signing tour because, as I mentioned to people, I spent all my budget basically designing the book, making the images, designing the book, and then I sell through myself. So you cannot find that book on Amazon or anywhere else but here or my website. So now that I quoted everybody else, let's quote myself. Through the rhythm of land, animals, and people, I seek to reveal what endures within us all, the quiet strengths of connection, the dignity of work, and the beauty of our shared humanity, aka the title. And if you are interested in buying the book, there is special here. Normally the book is $160. You can get it for much cheaper. Right there. So, and then if you want the other book there, I have very few left there, the black and white. So you let me know if you want the other book. So hopefully that gives you some ideas about how you can turn a basic lion and cub image into something that maybe speaks a little bit more about authenticity.
Quite a process to make a book,
It is a little process, yep.
quite a process. Can I ask, what was your average cost because of waste and all the time and the different locations? I mean, you spent a lot of time with.
This is 80,000. That's 80,000, that $80,000.
That's like 6 trips down.
And the other book is more expensive because I even use more ink and even better paper. And then if you look at it there, right? The only reason I sell books is to make another book. That's the only reason I sell books. But you know, there's some really good story that I have about those books there, right? I always tell the big story is that if I would have gotten only one of my book, I would have been delighted there, right? The ship would have sunk or whatever, right? And then on this book here, right? So my dad was a printmaker, right? So he printed quite a fair amount of books. We had a pretty tedious relationship towards the end there, right? For 3 years, we didn't really talk. And then I went back to Switzerland. He was very, very sick. And then I brought my book to him. It's the last time I saw him is four months before he died there. And he was in really, really bad shape there, right? He was in a bed there. He wasn't old there. But suddenly, when he saw that book, he started to just basically open every pages and started to make comments about whatever he felt about his printing and then all those different things there. And then I felt that was the reason why I actually made that book. So you never know why you eventually make something that is that precious there. But I feel that basically, and then at the end, he gave me a pretty good sentence. He said, "Son, you finally have accomplished something." You know? So that's kind of the idea. Yeah.
That's a parent for you.
What? Yeah.
I said that's a parent for you.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And 4 months later, he died. So unfortunate. So, you have any other question?
Yeah, you talked about multiple subjects within your photo. So you purposely go on complex? I mean, so many photographers are trying to eliminate things out of their photo until they get to the very most minimalist subject matter, so that you don't actually have too many things competing. You seem to
So,
sit somewhere in the middle.
is there anything distracting in that image?
No,
How many
but
subjects here?
I think it's very minimalist.
Wow. I mean, there is how many horses?
Well,
Yeah. How many horses on this one? Do you know how many images it took me to get this image there? You're looking at about 1,000 images, right? Because it's motion blur and then all those different things there, right? So I'll show you another image there, right? This one. And I just picked one, right? Right. So are there a lot of elements in this image? And I'll go around there, right? It's clean. Right? I'll go around. And then here you ask me if I would go around. Yes, I will. Right there. You want me to show it right there? You can see. Right there. But as everybody's going to buy the book, so you guys are all going to have it. Right? So this has a lot of elements in that image there, right? And then what are the elements? How did I get to making that image, right? Which is probably more a point than the minimalist approach. So those guys there, right, they are photographed a fair amount because it's a, it's a good looking couple, right? They're a good looking couple. And then when I saw them, they said, oh yeah, we can go there on that field, whatever. I said, do you know Indiana Jones? He said, what are you talking about? Yeah, the movie Indiana Jones. Oh, we love Indiana Jones. Now, does that have the feel of Indiana Jones?
Oh, yeah.
So you see there, right? So what did I do that day? I found suitcases. I found the cave to photograph it. This is all natural light. It's basically that's in evening, natural light, and all those different things. So you see the complexity of that image there, right? But that kind of a work. So I do things, and then I agree with you. If you have elements in your image that do not belong to the image, that is not additive, then yeah, it becomes kind of garbage that you should not have in your image. Talking about silhouette, look at about this one there, right?
Beautiful.
Right? You know that's Easter Island there, right?
Right.
Yeah, Easter Island. Right. How did I get that image on Easter Island? Yeah, how did I get that image there, right? So I'm there for 10 days. I cannot find the freaking horses on Easter Island, and I know that there are horses there, right? And then I go out one night, photograph a rock band, and then I photographed the rock band. The next day I met them, gave them the images, said, oh my God, your images are so good. I said, can you tell me where the horses are? I said, photograph us a few more nights, and then maybe we'll gather information. I was there 10 days. They gave me the idea where the horses were on day 9. Oh, and that's how I got that image. So you see there, right? It's nothing comes by luck, by sheer whatever, right? But if I look at Michael Kenna, right? You guys know Michael Kenna, photograph for Japan, the famous trees, the bear trees in Japan. It's clear that there he wants simplicity. Why? Because it's Japan, right? It's Japan. In Japan, you want simplicity. If you start to be cluttered in Japan, then it's not Japan there, right? Even if you photograph in the middle of Tokyo, that you feel that is that clutter light, there is a Zen moment that you have, right? So good question. Hopefully that helps you on the answer.
Yeah, no.
That's you. Is typically what I like myself in images is the hidden secret of an image. And I'll give you an example, because I didn't talk about that image there. It's there, this one. How many people do you see in that image? 4. 4, right? 4. The guy even look at it closer, 4 there, right?
Right.
You want a second chance?
5.
5. You see there, right? When you start to look at my images, what is right there?
Oh, baby.
Oh.
Guess what? If you would know the culture of basically the farmers, they always bring their baby with them, put them in a bag, and all that stuff there, right? And that's a grandma. So you see there, right? That's kind of the idea. I don't have another image there, but in a book there, I have, for example, a roof that is kind of a very steep pitch there. And people look at this steep pitch and they say, oh my God, this is an amazing image. And suddenly you see the 2 little people that are in the windows there. So I do things there. If you want, and then usually that's what people do with my books there, right? They leave it on the table, and every day they look at one image to get inspired. Said, "Oh my God, what works on that image? Why did he put that image there and not at another place in the book? Why does that sequence? Where does that rhythm in the book there?"
Do you consciously or unconsciously try to follow the rules of, well, rules or suggestions of, like, rule of odds, 5 people there, 7 people, 7 horses on the cover. Got 3 horses and 5 moa or whatever. I mean, you are constantly doing the rule of odds.
Well,
It's just interesting. And then you, on top of that, you have a layer of, you're contrasting warms with cools.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not sure if you do that in post or in printing, or it just happens that way, but you have this way of layering a bunch of different
Yeah.
classical things.
Yeah, it's a very good question. How do I build an image? So I have to build an image with a concept, right? Is I'm not going out there like I said, oh, what happened? When I crossed the prairies there, right? I didn't take many images because my concept was I have to present tonight. So I couldn't stop at every places I wanted to stop there, right? But I have a concept. Number 2, have the light. You see there that image there, right? It works because the light is phenomenal there, right? So I always have really good light on my images. And then after that, I build little things in addition to it there, right? And then I think the way I see it there, right? Those guys, it's not posed there. Because those guys have to go to the farm, they work really hard. If they miss one day, winter gets rougher, and then all those different things. So how do I photograph images like this? I basically in front of them with my wide angle, and then I go there, then I run, and then I just basically photograph them another one, and then I run again. And that's the reason why they have this facial expression there too, because they said we need to go to the field there, right? Is just almost you know what is photographers and move out of the way or stuff like that. Do I pay attention to the number? I mean, I have a master in physics there, right? So I probably know a little bit of numbers there, right? What numbers mean there. I probably pay, but I don't think that's what I go after, right? The number is not what I go after. I'll show you another image in the book there. Hey, silhouette. Right there. How did I get that image? Have you guys ever photographed rodeos or stuff like that? Right? It's a bitch, right? It's a total bitch. I hate the people that photograph rodeo. The professional people that photograph rodeo I mean, you see what I photograph. I'm a fine art photographer. I'm never going to sell images. Is what they do when you photograph rodeo or you photograph the hunter jumpers and all that stuff is a one-on-one relationship. Those guys make one image that only one person is interested. And who is that person? Is a person that is featured in the image, right? I make images that are like this, right? It's not about the people that are on the horses. It's about the feel of the place, right? So I was coming out of a rodeo, whatever, and then someone invited. There's always a Wednesday night. I do the Wednesday night. They always have this race comment. And the guy told me, said, "Oh, on Sunday you should come and photograph. I have a small rodeo." I go there on the Sunday, blue sky. And he said, "Boring like hell," right? And I said, "You know what? I'm going to stick with it." Right? I didn't take any images, but guess what happened in the afternoon? You guys should know that's in New Mexico, right? Close to you guys. The dust storm. The dust storm. And I said, right, instead of packing up my bag and then going somewhere else. And that's how that image basically happened there, right? That's the so did I envision that image? No. Have I seen an image that would relate to that. I think of that in the back of my mind. I wanted an image like this there, right? I think that's the so. But you notice in the old book, there's not very many picture of rodeo. I've probably 40,000 images of hunter jumpers, rodeos, and all that stuff, and none of those images made it to the book because I didn't feel that it was authentic. Yeah, it was not me. I didn't feel basically the people that I photographed. Any other question?
Anybody? Michael, you usually have a lot of questions.
Yeah, no, Dave already asked the questions that were.
I noticed, a lot of the people images in that book. And you obviously don't speak Chinese, like, how did you relate to those people to get such a personal connection?
So I typically photograph the people because I want them in their natural behavior, right? So I go there 1 year, 2 years, at least 2 years, if not 3 years. First year, because I'm, excuse me. Yeah, because I'm in pretty remote region. They have not seen very many white people, but that's not the point. They typically want their entire family to be photographed, and then it's very difficult to weed out the people because they feel offended. They say, oh, I want only this part, only want this part or whatever, right? It doesn't really work. So the second year when I go there, they kind of know that I'm a little bit more serious and then all this stuff. So they start to mind their own business, and then that's how I photograph them. So that's the, and then I mean, I have some tricks to weed out people, and I'll show you another image on this book here. Let's see if I can find it really quick.
Do you go with a picture?
Yeah, I always work with the, yeah, you have to work with a guide, and then usually is my own that I find is not the Nat Geo. So this image here, right, with a little girl. I think you know how to count. That's, this little girl there, right? Right there, little girl. Here, the little girls there, right? So I'm sure if you have traveled to foreign countries, you see all those kids after school there, right? And they all want to be photographed there, right? They come to you and you have your wide angle and then whatever, right? So how did I get just 5 girls? There were plenty of kids there. How did I get 5 girls? What trick did I use to get only 5 girls?
Threw candy the other way.
No. So basically what you do, right? There were boys and girls, right? If you get boys and girls running towards you, who is going to be first?
Boys.
Right. So eliminate the boys. So what you do a race, the girls and the boys. Yeah. And then what happened there, right? The girls comes, and then afterwards is how do you position the girl? And then now that I closed the page of the book, now I want you to notice the composition in that image. What is unique about that composition? Not all of them. You see the pillars? The 2 older girls are the pillars for the younger girls. So you see the meanings there, right? The pillars that becomes the support for the younger girls, and the younger girls that are off the ground there. Yeah, you see the pillars, the 2 older girls are the pillars, and then the younger girls are off the ground, right? Not that I want to sell my book,
You have a
but
picture of just a older lady just alone.
yeah,
That's just spectacular, and
right.
it looked like you had a real connection, but I'd be real curious to.
Yeah, so the older lady, I'm not sure which one you're talking about, but
Maybe I'll.
that's probably on the cane there. She was on the cane there, or just find the Not that I want to sell books, but if you want to learn about photography and do some books that you probably want to invest in. And you know what? If you don't like the book, I'll buy it back from you because I need those books. So that's it. Yeah. But what you can do, or was it
Oh,
this lady?
That was, I saw that one, but that
That was
wasn't
this
the one I
lady
was
there?
thinking.
No, there was another one there.
That one,
Oh, with the gold there.
this
Yeah.
one, I just think that is,
Yeah. Uh,
3, 1.
yeah. But you see basically.
How did you get that connection? I mean, did you just,
Yeah.
were you there for a while? or
Yeah.
Do you remember?
So those are the tattooed ladies. She's tattooed.
Oh.
So that's deep inside Myanmar.
Oh,
Yeah, she's tattooed, is really deep inside Myanmar.
Mhm.
So she's tattooed. So the tattooed ladies were tattooed in the 60s and 70s. Yep. So the tattooed ladies were in the 60s, 70s. And then the reason they basically tattooed the ladies is the Khmer Rouge. You might have heard about the Khmer. Khmer was a brutal army, was absolute brutal. That was at the border of Cambodia, Laos, and Burma. And they were pillated the villages. So when they were getting into villages, first thing they would do is rape the young girls. So the people there thought that said, if we tattooed a little girl, then it would look so ugly that they would be spared. So, and I met one of the tattooed guy there. He said it was 10 hours to tattoo the young girl.
Wow.
To get to that place, that was 3 days travel from Myanmar. Yeah, from the Yangon. 3 days travel from Yangon. That's the. So how did I get to your question? How did I get that image there? So when you're that far off the beaten track there, people are curious about you. Yeah, they're curious about you. And when you start to smile, there I posed her a little bit there because she had the gong. She didn't feel really well there. She was a little under the weather. And then it was all about the light. And then how serious, I wanted her to be serious there. So this is an image that I posed there, right? But there was another image where she's on a cane. It was that lady. She was about 3 miles away in another village. She heard that I was there photographing. She gets to the village, where I photograph, and she's so tired. She goes, sit down, and I'm right there to take her images, right? So it happened once in a while.
I'm fascinating. I mean,
Yeah. I didn't, go ahead.
I was gonna say just the happenstance that you emailed me and I'm like, well,
Yeah.
I'm curious. And then I looked at your website. I'm like, oh, he's got some fabulous images, and then everything fell into place to put it
Yeah,
together.
great. Thanks, Bruce.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I didn't have all the questions we had about numbers and. Great questions though. But just the storytelling, when I first walked in here and I went through the
Mhm.
black and white book over there. And just the storytelling that you're getting there and that, and again, as a photographer, but I don't do a whole lot of that, but I'm fascinated by, as I was going through there, just the
Mhm.
stories that you have in there. I mean, you've already kind of answered the question about you're making the connection and you're getting to know them personally and so forth, and that to get those. But again, not a question, but it's fascinating just as I go through there. And the horse one's obviously amazing too, and that is the.
Keep doing it. Find your voice.
When you travel, like you're going to Myanmar,
Thailand, right?
Burma,
Thailand. Yeah,
Thailand
yep.
here. Obviously, you take flashes with you.
Yep.
What type of equipment do you haul with you? And,
About 70 pounds on the plane. Carry on is about 70 pounds. And then check in, 2 pair of underwear, 1 pair of socks, and 1 pair of. And my tripod. That's it.
Would be me.
What do I carry? I carry 2 300-watt flashes, 2 speed light, I have two soft boxes. One is a 44-inch soft box. And I found those soft box that really lay flat there. You know that I don't have to put all the baling. They're very expensive, but they're really super flat there. It's very important to have as big of a soft box as possible so that it diffuses the light there. I carry a barn door, to basically figure out where I want the light to go there. Camera wise, I carry, I have one GFX. I shoot the Fuji GFX. One Fuji GFX, one Fuji GFX that is converted, so 100 megapixel IR converted. And then I usually, I wish I would be gutsy enough to take only one lens, but I typically photograph mostly with a 45 millimeter lens and now a 20-35. I always take other lenses that I pretty much never use. But when I go to Africa, I add the Sony to it. I do a Sony, right now I have an A7R5 with one lens, with a 400 millimeter lens, 400 2.8. That's basically what I have on there.
Light stands as well, or?
In Africa? Oh, a light stand. Oh, yeah, I have light stand there. Light stand, tripod. Yeah, and I have filters. What else do I carry?
Do you take your Hasselblads, or are they too?
No, I don't shoot with a Hasselblad anymore because the Fuji has replaced the Hasselblad. The Fuji is a medium format. I've had some pretty amazing cameras, by the way. So I had the Hasselblad, right, which is medium format. Eventually that got stolen. And Hasselblad did not back me up on that one there. So I was a little ticked off at the Hasselblad. Because typically what I told him, I said, well, look, I'm going to buy a new Hasselblad, but give me the trade-in price. And he said, no, you need to have a camera. And he said, I've done a lot for you guys, but beside the point. So then I bought the camera because you see, I do quite a few panel images there, right? So I got a digital panel camera, which is called the Zeiss round shot. The Zeiss round shot is a 617, digital 617. So what it does on the digital 617, it's heavy. It's basically the camera, it's about 34 pounds.
Wow.
So what you do with that camera, it operates with a computer. You have a computer, and it does basically one pass. It's like a scanner. It goes like this there, right? And it's amazing. And my idea was that grand images of Africa. That great migration with all the animal and then all that stuff. So I get to the airport. My back was hurting there. And then I wanted to carry that camera on the plane, but my back was hurting so bad that they forced me to check in the camera, right? And then my flight was San Francisco, LA. That camera is $70,000. And I've made only 100 cameras in the world. So what? San Francisco, LA, Nairobi, crime capital of the world, Mombasa, right? So I arrive in Mombasa, and then my two underwear and one sock arrived there, right? And then I said, oh shit, my camera case is not here, right? I said, don't worry about it. It's probably delayed flight, right? So the next day I had to go on the safari, right? We start the safari. So I have one guy that stays behind. And then the case arrived the next day. Good news, the case arrived the next day. So I asked him, he said, open the case and try to see if there was foam everywhere. If every foam slot there is filled. I said, yeah, every except one. That was basically the camera was gone.
Oh, jeez.
So definitely the first thing I did is I called the Swiss manufacturer and I told him, he said, my camera got stolen, right? And then keep an eye on it because they hadn't stolen all the parts of the camera. So they needed to buy at least a battery to operate that camera that they hadn't stolen there, right? So then I called a friend in the US who is really good doing search. He's amazing doing search. I said, my camera got stolen. can you start to track it, try to see if you can find it and all that stuff there, right? So that was November. In January, he finds that basically the camera was sold on eBay. And then what was surprising is that basically all my friends wanted that camera, right? Because they said, that's amazing. And they said, the day you sell it, we probably would buy it used from you because we don't have to pay that much money. That camera got sold for $6,000.
$6 grand.
$6,000, right?
And it was a
$70,000 camera, right? So, and then, so right after, basically after my friend found it, I called the Swiss manufacturer and he said, we know who actually has your camera. Because they had to call and get the batteries and then all that stuff there, right? So I went to the San Francisco airport, right? And I told him, he said, oh no, actually, sorry. I went first to eBay because it got bought on eBay. And I said, I know who actually has that camera. Is a Swiss manufacturer. I can connect you with a Swiss manufacturer and then get my camera back there, right? eBay said, we don't know if it's your camera or not. So a bunch of moron there, right? So then after I went to the San Francisco airport and I said, I know where that camera is. Go get that. San Francisco, he said, when was the last time you saw your camera? I said, it's right here at San Francisco airport. He said, it shows on our tracker that that camera left San Francisco. There's nothing we can do.
Oh, gee.
But what they knew that camera, something happened in LA. So I thought I was in Nairobi there, right?
It was LA.
It was LA. So now it's in LA. And then I don't know if you remember, that was a few years ago. There was a big gang that was stealing luggages, stuff into luggages in LA. And they were basically trying to catch this guy. And my camera get caught in the middle of it. And the LA basically investigator did not want to do anything and to just basically blow the fuse before they could catch those guys there, right? So I had another workshop in Iceland, and a friend of mine told me, said, you know what you should do? Call the FBI. Because high price, cross states, that's what basically the FBI is. So that was, now we're June timeframe. And you know, the longer you wait for this camera, they can start to recirculate or go somewhere else there, right? So I'm teaching a workshop at the end of June. And I get a call from a number that I don't know there, right? And it's a panel workshop that I'm teaching, actually. I pick up the call, and the guy said, well, this is the FBI office in New Mexico. I said, oh, that's where my camera is there, right? We have two news for you, a bad news and a good news. And he says, well, give me the bad news first. He said, well, you have to pay for shipping if you want your camera back.
But they had your camera.
So what the FBI did, they went and knocked on the guy's door, which was in New Mexico. He was a doctor. And the guy basically gave the camera back there, right? And then they ship it back to me. So then after that, the guy had never used a camera, right? And he had bought all those parts that were probably the equivalent of about $8,000 there. And I said, and he called me and said, well, what can I do? Do you want to buy it from me? And I said, I'll buy the two batteries. You know, you were nice enough not to trash my camera or whatever, right? I'll buy the battery. The viewfinder, I will make sure that Swiss company, basically, you can return it to, right? So it was not too much money out of the... And then after he asked me, he said, do you teach workshop on how to photograph with that camera? And he came and took a workshop from me. So I actually met the guy. I met the guy there, right? That's, you know... Yeah. So, and then after I goes, and then, you know, you are there, and he said, what is the probability is that another camera, high-end camera, would get stolen from me? I go to frigging southern France, and my Hasselblad camera gets stolen there. But there I couldn't never retrieve it. Southern France, it disappeared like really quickly. That's, you know.
Very good.
That's exactly true. Thank you.
Thank you
I appreciate it.
very much.
Yeah.
For those of you at home, I'll end this and it will be recorded and put online probably in a week or so. Have a good night, everybody.